Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 107, where I speak with composer and sound designer Kyle Misko. In this episode, we talk about what made them want to work with games, words of wisdom from their experiences, the games that hook them on video games, their favorite games, the game series he'd like to work on, life outside of gaming, as well as some lightning round questions. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about Kyle as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 107. Hi, welcome to the Red Tunic podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Kyle Misko, a composer and sound designer that has contributed to games such as The Case of the Golden Idol, Space Wreck, several indie games, as well as the Legacy of Kain series. Hi, Kyle. How are you doing today?
Hi, Link. Doing very good. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making the time. I know we initially spoke uh a good while ago now, but the schedules just didn't line up, and I'm glad that everything is able to work out now, even even if it took, I think at this rate something like 6 or so months of a little bit of back and forth every now and then.
Yes, absolutely. I'm also very happy that we're finally having a chance to make this happen. Definitely, it's been some time, and also there was different obstacles and maybe time differences. But most important is that it's happening, and I'm glad. I'm really glad for it.
Awesome. Yes, I'm always happy that, always happy to hear that people are, happy to be here. I don't think I've had anyone outright tell me they're not happy to be here yet. So, fingers crossed it doesn't happen, but all the same, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad we're talking. Now, Kyle,
Awesome.
before we get started though, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind telling me and anyone listening a little bit about yourself, kind of like the elevator pitch of who you are, or like the well, I think elevator pitch is good enough. I shouldn't ramble on and try and elaborate on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, of course, of course. Yeah, so just to summarize, you started it very well. Yes, so I'm composer, so I work as composer and sound designer for video games for several years now. Since probably 2020 is when I started. I'm actually originally from Ukraine, so I was born there and had a big piece of my life living there. And yeah, and basically I've traveled the world a bit. I lived in several places. I had the opportunity to be like an exchange student in US for a year and live in New York and some other places in Europe and all of that. And yeah, I'm now here in London and starting a new chapter of my life where I can finally dedicate all of my time to my passion and so kind of that's where I'm at.
Awesome. So thank you for sharing that. And I am curious just because you mentioned that you've lived all over the place, New York, different parts of Europe. I'm wondering like how did that go about? Was that like uh I don't want to say this in like a negative way of like saying were you chasing work, but like was that for work or was that more for travel, or was it like a combination of both where you're like, "Oh, I'm here, but I can also do some work and enjoy the time, being where you are?" Cuz I asked that from the perspective of, I'm Canadian. I live in Canada. For Canada, specifically, I live in a province that takes like 24 hours to get from side to side, from like east to west. Um, so like it's a big province, whereas uh, Europe as a whole is really big, but all the countries are, smaller and easier to do like a trip out of a country to another and all that fun stuff. So like that's where that question is, the perspective of, for me it's not that easy to just up and move, whereas, if you're European, it might be a little easier. So I'm just wondering like how did that come about? Sorry.
Yeah, no, and it makes absolute like 100% sense. Like we are big. Europe is big as a whole, but it is kind of more accessible, I guess, like to and traveling shorter distances, you go over multiple different countries, so it's more like likely to for people from this part of the world to kind of like visit different countries. But it's kind of like an equivalent of you going to different provinces, but here it would be just like different countries. But yeah, in my life, it has been different circumstances. I would say the very first time, for example, so it's been always some kind of different circumstance. It would be work focused, yes, but a lot of it would definitely be like dream focused, honestly. I would say this way, because I've been always, I don't know, as a maybe as a creative person or just as a person in general, I've been always on the search for something. So I was always inspired. I'm in general, I really love discovering new places and traveling to new places. So I'm always looking for that opportunity and to to discover something new. So and so like for example, I'll make like just a quick recap. So I ended up, for example, in Oregon in US because I was curious to try to win this program to become like an exchange student for 1 year in US. So I gave it a go, and due to like lots of circumstances, I was actually able to make it happen, and I was an exchange student there for a year. Then, when I went to New York, that was actually my childhood dream. I was like, I grew up, like a big part of me grew up on all these, U.S. movies, like with New York, and I kind of always had that since I was 6 years old. I think I remember even my mom was telling me like, I remember you were 6 and you said I will go and I will live there. So and in fact, I can almost remember that memory of being 6 years old and saying that as well. So I really wanted to go there just because I was just fascinated by the city. And so I found the work that could help me get there. But the most important thing about this travel was about actually going to experience the city. And then kind of the work was almost like a secondary thing. So I was actually just, when I was going there, I was like, guys, which kind of work there is? But just most important is that it's there. So then that was the reason for going over there. And then in Europe, where I had the chance to live in countries like Czech Republic and in Montenegro for just about a year, and those were more like they had different circumstances because I was living in Ukraine. I came back, so I lived. There were some gaps here and there, and then I left Ukraine like roughly at the end of 2022 or 2023. And while I was finding a way to like either maybe come back to US or maybe go to Canada or maybe go to UK, like me and my wife were looking to live in an English speaking country. It just happened that through again another series of circumstances that it was good to stay like in Czech Republic at the time because a friend of mine offered us a place there so we could stay there for a few months, and then Montenegro because it was another complication that I couldn't stay in EU, so we were looking for places that were not in EU but yet in Europe. So Montenegro is like amazing choice because it's next to the sea, it's very relaxing, it's next to Croatia and Italy. It shares the same sea, the Adriatic Sea. So then there was that. And then finally, I'm here in UK now already for like reasons of like actually trying to find like a home to settle and already to live. And we ended up here thanks to this basically program I was just talking about it the other day. It's basically like a Ukrainian program that allows us to have residency and stay here for a few years and try to. So that also gives us time to understand if this could be the place to make home. So like that. That's as short as I could try to answer it.
So, thank you for explaining all of, walking me through that, explaining it however you would like to phrase that, I suppose. But like that's really interesting how, the going to New York, but also, and I don't mean this in too much of a cut against anyone from like Oregon, but at the same time, that's a wild place to be a exchange student. Like, when I went through high school, there was exchange students that came in, and I went to high school in a I don't wanna say a big town or a big city. It was, by Canada standards, decent enough sized, about, 150,000 people, um, which in comparison, our biggest city has, like, 3,000,000 people inside of it. Our, other ones are significantly smaller than that. Um, so, like, that's a large enough city by our standards. But, like, I could never imagine any of, like, the exchange students coming in and going to, you know, a much quieter place or what have you, just because I I just don't know how that would work, if that makes any sense. Like, just me personally, if I applied to an exchange program and ended up, you know, somewhere quieter or as quieter as I was from, I'd be like, well, this is kind of disappointing. But that's a personal thing, right? I'm not trying to like impose that on you. But just like the thought of it is just wild to me. But I hope all those experiences were enjoyable. And like I also hope, you know, understandably, because of I'm trying to think of how to phrase this one. The geopolitical climate, I guess, for what's happening with Ukraine. Sorry, I'm just trying to think how to phrase that without it. I think you know
Yeah.
what I mean. But
Yes,
like
yes.
the hopefully you are able to find like a place that you can live and feel like safe and happy and like call home. You know what I mean?
Mm. That has been the quest line, definitely. I wanted to add quickly that when I was going to exchange program, we actually don't know where are we gonna end up. So that's kind of one thing, is that this program is fully sponsored. We go, and it's like an opportunity of a lifetime, honestly, to go to like another continent. Especially being from like Ukraine, from like post-Soviet Union countries, and being able to travel all the way to another continent, being like 16 years old. Incredible experience, but that's the thing, you don't know where you're gonna end up. So yeah, like but I didn't find it anyhow underwhelming. I was so fascinated and happy to be there, and in general, I guess, like, that's the culture that that kind of my mom and grandma kind of probably passed on to me, that I'm just grateful for, like, whatever experience, even if it might seem like underwhelming in from some other perspective. I'll be I'll be happy for it anyways. And thank you so much also for your wishes about finding the home. That really is a quest line right now, because ultimately what we want to do, like, with my partner, with my wife, is that we want to have a place where we can focus, like, probably like what most people want to do, like a place where you can focus on your career, where you can build, either it's like your business or it's your work, do good in that, to be in a society where you feel accepted, where you feel like you can be yourself, and also, like, be in that social circle that is like that is warm, and that is and you're kind of building that around you. So that's what we're, like, ultimately looking for. And yeah, so thank you for your wishes. I hope that we will finally answer that question sometime soon. So
Fingers crossed. Right? And also to be clear, I wasn't trying to dunk on Oregon in too harsh a way.
no.
I've been there briefly. I went through like some of the mountains. It's a very nice place. I'm just meaning for me, I grew up in a small town. I I would go crazy if I went from one small town to a place that was similar kind of countryside. However,
Mm,
from the perspective that I'm sure you had or probably had, like you said, coming from an old Soviet Union, I'm trying to think of the right word. But like, one of the old countries, and which I would presume, probably did not have the same kind of uh, landscapes and mountains, and living in an area that has existed before, or populatedly existed with like actual towns and everything for hundreds of years before even the thought of something like Oregon or Portland or any of the other cities there existing. I imagine that was a nice change of pace. So I just want to be clear. I wasn't trying to dunk too hard on Oregon there. It's just personally for me, it's like I come from a countryside. I don't need to see more countryside. But
Uh,
I'm sure for you it was a really wild thing to like experience.
Absolutely, like, and more like, and the landscapes, of course, are the climate and the geology. It can be different as well, but like the most biggest difference and what I enjoyed the most is definitely being like in another culture, like in another mentality, like, and especially being part of that culture and mentality that I watched on TV as a kid. Like that for me was fascinating, even if I was living like in the middle of like the desert, but it would still be like the. And it was actually nice. Actually, I lived in Hillsboro, so which was close to Portland, so it was still nicely populated, and the city was close by. Some of my friends actually lived truly in like more like villages and stuff. Like, so I kind of was in an in between location. So I'm happy. I'm really. It was like a big year in my life. That was 2012 to 2013, and I'm very grateful for it. So yeah, it's in my heart. So it's great.
So, Kyle, I don't want to keep badgering you about the same thing or trying to reiterate the same thing. So, don't mind me, with a horrible transition to push it along. However, you work with games. You make, you do composing and you starting to do sound design. I'm wondering though, like, what was it that made you want to do that? Like, was there a specific game or was it just games in general, or like how did you get into it? You can take that question and answer however you'd like.
Sure, sure, sure. Of course. I would definitely say that. Um, I'm guessing probably like for most people that are into gaming, I would say that the my biggest introduction into that world was definitely through um, actually like playing games as a kid. So my dad, he actually had this. So just to give a perspective, was born in 1996, so that was around the time that like PC started to like, and in general, I did grow up on PC games mostly. Um, Consoles for me was like some kind of like alien notion. I didn't know about existence of like things like Nintendo and PlayStation for like a long while, basically. And um, basically, I would say that it started just when I was about like 6 years old or 5 years old, when my dad needed a computer. He had to have it for like work reasons, work related reasons. And he did have a couple of games. And I would say that's probably where my journey started, actually watching him play video games as I was like 5 or 6, and then tackling them myself. And then kind of it just became part of my life from there onwards. Um, and I would say that I wasn't actually. I really loved video games, but I wasn't really considering to make music for video games, or actually even be connected to the game industry all the way up until I was like 18. So let's say like 5 years old, 6 years old is when I kind of started, and then it was up until 18, so probably about 12 years. Um, yeah, until I like really thought like, okay, actually I want to like work in this industry. And there's many things that led me to it. Um, and in fact, I wasn't even thinking to be involved with music as well. So I mean, it's just something that came naturally, and so I would say music probably came first. And then after that, uh, I was always playing games as a kid, and then kind of music came first, but then I was still playing video games all the time. And then just probably by the time that I was like 18 is where I was like 17 roughly, was when I came back actually from Oregon, from that exchange program, and I had to choose what to study. That's where I've met someone who actually helped me understand that this would be like amazing to try to do for a living. So yeah, that's in general.
And I'm also wondering from your experiences, because it sounds like it kind of. I don't. Wow, sorry. I hope this isn't uh being too much of a reductionist or hand waving it or what have you. But it kind of sounds like you just went into doing like music composing or music in general. Don't mind me just putting the big umbrella up there, because as someone who is not in that industry line of work, I know there's a whole bunch of different moving parts and everything, but for me, it's just music. So my apologies on that umbrella. However, it sounds like you just sort of started doing that and found your way into games because you enjoyed them. I'm wondering if you have any like words of wisdom from your experiences that you can share, or maybe even like if you were to go back and talk to yourself when you were younger, if there was like advice you would give yourself so that you could avoid some of the pitfalls that you might have stumbled through now. I hope that question makes sense.
Absolutely no, of course, it definitely does. Well, I would say like generally, I mean, it might sound like a bit cliche in that hindsight, but I do strongly believe that one kind of word of wisdom I would say is that I do feel like whatever you kind of want to whatever you want to do in life, and if you really it's kind of maybe if you saw Back to the Future, and then the guy says there to the Marty, like if you put your mind to it, everything is accomplishable. And I don't know, it may be a little bit cliche again, like, oh, people like heard it maybe many times, but like I actually genuinely believe that it's possible. So that's one thing, is if I could go back to myself like being a kid, or if I could like say any kind of, I don't know if I would say words of wisdom, but in general, like some advice, is that like it's possible, like 100% it's possible. There are like millions of examples of people from the most diverse backgrounds, with the most difficult backgrounds, with the most impossible backgrounds, that made it with what they really want to do. And um I think unless there's of course some people have some like physical or mental like disability that doesn't allow it them to do something that what they really want to do. But if that's all good, I think that's completely like any goal you put, I feel like is actually accomplishable. Like it's possible. It's a lot of hard work and hustle, but it's possible. And then another thing, if I would say, like going back as a kid, uh, one thing I would definitely also consider is, if I can define early on, because many people can't define early on what do they really want to do. I've kind of defined this when I was 17. Now I'm like 28, turning 29, and like in 10 years, it's been like, okay, I've been reaffirmed many times that I really love this. But um, if somebody can actually define what it is that they want to do, I feel like location, and like I think maybe even university, honestly, like is could be like such a great and important choice, because um when you are like there studying, if you can study in a country where you want to work ultimately, and if you can study in the area, like in a field that you want to be like working in the future, I think that's like incredible. Like that gives you a really big boost in the future, because while you're studying there, and it's not even so much for the knowledge, because the knowledge today is out there, you can get all that knowledge in YouTube and everything. But I think especially in industry like the video game industry, and and I'm sure that transliterates to other creative industries like film industry, and like I don't know how it works, I don't know, in lawyers or in those other umbrellas, in medical and everything, but in these, like people that you do know really matter. And I think if you can set yourself early on to meet people from like in your area that are just getting into it, and like kind of be in the same classroom, like I don't know, if we think of film directors, like be in the same classroom as, like, I don't know, young George Lucas is studying, or young Christopher Nolan is studying, or I don't know, like but the next kind of the new generation of that, that's like incredible, so that's one thing I didn't have, and that's one thing that I kind of wish I had. I studied something completely different, because kind of like my uh, not both of my parents, but like one of my parents was not so much supportive of my idea of like doing composition and stuff. But that's one thing that I would definitely like recommend. So two things I would say, yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that. And, as someone that I'm trying to think of how to best phrase it. As someone that kind of maybe went through the same thing as you, where they didn't really know what they wanted to do, or they didn't know how to put like the words into it. Me personally, it was a few different times. You know, when I was like 5, I wanted to be a homicide detective. I don't know where the idea of being a homicide detective came to from a like for a 5-year-old. I really don't. But like, that was a really hard thing to say to anyone, right? To be an attainable thing. And then when I got older, I went to school a few times and I didn't know how to put into words the thing I wanted to do and ended up not doing that. In this case, it was like graphic design. I should have went to be a UX and UI designer. That would have been the more optimal. But anyway, but what I'm getting at is as someone that can relate to that, uh, I think it's fantastic advice to say like, if you can have an idea of the direction you want to go and also surround yourself with passionate people that want to like have an idea that's in the same realm because then you're going to be able to both kind of or not both but all of you I guess would like be able to help build each other up or you know work on projects together or like work in a direction that you're going to be happy with. I just think that's fantastic advice. um Hard advice like because you have to have a bunch of I shouldn't say kids because, I imagine by the time you're doing this, you'd be in your lower teens or what have you. But like you have to find people that are going to be working towards that and like being able to do that. Uh, I just think that's good advice to like be like, yeah, find like-minded people and just go, right? So
Hmm.
thank you for that because I think, yeah, like I said, I think that's just fantastic advice, and
Oh,
it's
thank
it's
you.
just it's networking, and it's in a really it's just networking, but also like practical networking.
Yes, yes. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you found it so good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So Kyle, I am also curious. I'm going to ask this one because you said that you started, your journey into gaming was more watching your father playing PC games, and as obviously as you got older, you started playing PC games. Um, and I don't want to say it doesn't shock me to know that you didn't really explore consoles, mainly because like you were in Europe. And I know that, for Europe as a whole, like all of the different kind of PC game stuff was just way more prevalent. I don't know how or when like that shift might have changed to be consoles and stuff. I just know that there was like a rich history of all these different little PC stuff and like, PC demo disc magazines or what have you, shareware, however you want to phrase it, just existed way in such like a bigger quantity than it did in North America. Whereas North America, we didn't really get like the Amstrad, the Commodores, the all the other
I
ones that I don't know the names of.
Yes, yes. I wanted to quickly add actually to that. I was thinking actually now that you mention it, I'm thinking that possibly one of the reasons that we could have it like really, I don't know how was the rest of Europe also, like Western Europe or like Central, like if Western like France and UK. I think in UK they did have also like more console stuff. But like us, particularly in Eastern Europe and like particularly like Slavic people, and also I think in the in the Baltics and in the Balkans, like Polish people and like the Northern Europe also, had PCs because I feel like they were more accessible in that hand side. And also what I remember specifically, like living in Ukraine, is that the very first time I actually saw like an official licensed store of video games was like in 2011, honestly. Like, and okay, don't take my word for it that up until maybe maybe it started earlier, but I just remember the fascination of walking into like a store with official games. Because I did buy games all the time, but we had stores everywhere in the 2000s of like all the pirated versions of all these games that had like maybe one voiceover or two voiceovers. A lot of them were actually like shipped from like in Ukraine, particularly. We had like many publishers like from Russia that we were shipping their games to Ukrainian markets, so you could actually like go to the stores and buy them. They were very cheap, but they were nevertheless like most of them were like pirated games. And I remember even the first game that I saw like with official cover was like Diablo 3, which I love. Diablo, like maybe we'll get to it at some point, but anyways, but yeah, and I just remember that moment, and I feel like for consoles it's not maybe it really has to do also with piracy, honestly, that it wasn't so widespread. And maybe because in the 90s, because all of our post-Soviet Union countries are really old in their history, but they're also very young because we just kind of broke off from Soviet Union in 1991. So those chains, those links from the West of like supplying the games and bringing them over, and having like a reliable supplier, that brings things here, it wasn't there yet, or at least I didn't experience it like in my city in Zhytomyr. Maybe somebody who lived like in Ukraine, in Kiev, maybe in the capital, it was more possible, but I'm speaking also from experience living like in a smaller city. And so that's kind of could be my thought on why maybe we had predominantly like the PC games, because of their accessibility. So that's what I wanted to add quickly.
No, and that makes perfect sense. And it's always a matter of, I don't know if circumstance is the right word, but I'm gonna go with it. But it's always like a matter of circumstance for what you're exposed to, right? Like I know, and I can speak to this one just because I've read about this one. And like for example, you had Brazil for the longest time. They didn't have as many console games, or if they did, they were older console games, and that was just due to the import taxes and fees and duties or what have you that really just made a lot of that super expensive. So like, for example, Brazil, they ran like the Sega Master System or the before the Master System, whatever that one was, I never remember, is we had different names in Canada for it or North America. But either which way, like the circumstances that made it so that that was what was popular there and had such staying power, there's always going to be those circumstances. But what I was, so thank you for that. But what I was going to get to, and I think this might lead
Yes.
into the thing that you had just mentioned for Diablo. But I'm wondering, like, while watching your dad play games, or when you finally got a chance to play games or what have you, like what was the game that really hooked you at first? Or what was the game that, maybe you were able to sneak away when he wasn't around and hooked you on a personal level as opposed to like a third party observer level? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's great. Also, quick comment. I completely agree with you what you mentioned also there about Brazil, like very similar story. But yeah, basically, to answer your question about this, so interestingly, so so the closest big city that I'm close that I've that I was living nearby is called Zhytomyr. But actually, where I grew up is a small town about 5 kilometers away. And in our small town, it's like a military town because my father, he's like a pilot, so he was there. And he had like his group of military friends. And so one of these military friends was actually really heavily into gaming, like and into computer science and everything. And I think he was like an IT guy in this military base that it was like nearby. And he actually started his own little shop. And I'm not sure from where did he get those games? I have to find out, honestly. Maybe I'll ask my dad sometime about it. And honestly, like the games that I grew up on are the games that my father would buy from buy, or maybe actually he would lend them to him from this one supplier in our town of video games. And it was a really like peculiar kind of choice also of video games. It's, I wouldn't say that it's very conventional, but at the same time it's also something that it was like very popular at the time. And so the ones that I remember my dad playing like and watching him play was interestingly, the first one that comes up to my mind is Legacy of Kain, which I always thought it was like a European game, but then I discovered that it was an American game that just like did maybe like way better like in European markets. So seeing that Soul River game, just having those images, and I remember later already I tried to even like dig in my memory and go to like 5 years old me looking at what my father is playing, and I remember googling that image just to try to find which game he played. So there was that game. Harry Potter was like absolutely a huge part of like that era of like me seeing him play and then playing it myself. Um, then another one was definitely, I'm actually having a list here because on my website I listed games that like inspired me, and definitely another one would be Rome Total War. So it's the Total War series, and then this one is about Rome. So that was like around 2004. Um, and then I would say, to wrap it up in that specific era of like seeing my father play, I definitely have memories of seeing him play Heroes of Might and Magic, and specifically the third one, because that one went huge in Ukraine, in Russia, in Belarus, in Poland, in well in that space. Like that was huge as well. Um, yes. So and then of course I'm looking here at others like Need for Speed, but I feel like that came a bit later, and I didn't see him play them. But yeah, those are a few titles I wanted to throw out there. Yeah.
So, I'm gonna let you know a secret. I don't think Heroes of Might and Magic 3 was explicitly tied to being big in that area. I would go as far to say that Heroes of Might and Magic 3 was big everywhere. And that's not me trying to argue.
Oh.
That's me just making the comment that Heroes of Might and Magic 3, you I personally have not been able to throw a stone and not hit someone that grew up playing games in like the 90s or early 2000s. That was like, "Oh yeah, I love that series." Um,
Oh,
so just more for your
that's
own
great.
knowledge that that game is probably I don't know why it's a fantastic game. Don't get me wrong. This
Yeah,
is not a I
yeah.
don't understand how like why 'cause it's a great game. I do understand this, but I don't understand how it became such a great game that everyone has played it and that everyone has, like nothing but praises for it. Like I said, I understand why it's a fantastic game. I just don't understand how it's like one of those universal games akin to like Mario or Sonic, right? It just is. And it's
Oh,
fantastic that it is because it's a great game. But
uh,
that one, just for your own knowledge, I guess, is
uh,
there's a good chance you can just throw a stone and you're going to hit someone that grew up playing that game in some way, shape, or form.
that's amazing. That's wonderful. I guess also a lot of my understanding of like a specific like US market comes from when I was actually an exchange student, and I was there in a high school, and I was talking about all of these games, and most people didn't know what I was talking about. Like actual like, games like Sonic and like Mortal Kombat, we had them like on like not even on a PlayStation, but I remember playing it like on an arcade machine or something like this. But I don't know, but this game, I'm glad to know that it was also big, also in the Western world, and I will even add a bit more. I've had such lovely chats with Paul Anthony Romero, who is like the composer for the series, and I just absolutely love speaking with him. We kind of started chatting on Facebook, and he's really great. And uh, also later, speaking of like soundtracks, also that influenced me. Like that game influenced me as a gamer, and enjoying it, and I still play it like to this day. But also, its music is something that has like connected to me in such a way. Like wow, it's a great title. So
Yes, like I need to be careful just because, if I'm not, the next like 30 minutes could just be about Heroes of Might and Magic 3 or that series.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
like I said,
absolutely.
and what shocks me is that at what would have been a period where people should have known what that was, no one knew what you were talking about, which is disappointing. Because like, come on, Oregon, what's wrong with you? Like we're like how come on, like don't live in that don't live that far back in the past. You guys should have been more modern. If me as a because Heroes of Might and Magic 3 came out in the late 90s, I want to say. And like if me on a dial-up computer with Windows 95 was able to download Heroes of Might and Magic 1 and 2, like the demos, and then get the demo for 3, those people in the 2000s should have definitely been up on, knowing what that was all about. Like, what's wrong with them?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, interestingly, so that's wonderful, and I agree. Yeah, we should continue because we can even make a whole podcast just talking about the series because it's a great one. But that's
Yes.
that's that's cool.
Uh, but I am also curious because you touched on when you were, for games for your like, well, you're watching your dad play. But I'm wondering, like, in those, or even like after that, when you finally got let loose and where you had, the ability to play without too much of a headache of, having to hide or, time limits or however you want to phrase it or consider it. But I'm like wondering if you had like an actual favorite game and like what the favorite game is and like why that game was the game for you to be a favorite. I phrased that really weird. I apologize.
No, no, no. Yeah, I understand you. Like, oh, it's difficult to choose. Again, I'm kind of like looking here back on the list of games that like really um influenced me a lot. But if I had to pick one that like definitely shaped me a lot, like, and if we're talking about that era of like being in that 6, 7, 8, and like then me getting like you said, I still had time limits up until like 14 years old, but it was just like 1 hour or 1.5 hour, and nothing to do with this, but I remember one time I was sick and then my mom left and then I played actually for 2 hours. And then I was like, and then she actually comes earlier than she was supposed to arrive. And I was like, oh my God, oh no. And then I quickly turned off the computer. And then I'm like, okay, looks like I'm like not busted. And then she goes and she checks that the computer was warm. You know, she checked like actually on the back of it and she discovered. And I was like, no. So I was like, no, I got totally busted. Like, but yeah. Anyways, with my short um time limits that I had, like half an hour, like 1 hour. The one and maybe one more I'll mention, but one game for sure that comes to mind is actually Harry Potter. I did mention it earlier, but the PC game of the Harry Potter like played a very big and like integral part in my childhood in general, because it just combined everything that I love about. Also, I love many things about games, but it combined many things for me. It clicked for me in many ways, because the first of all, the setting, like I love castles. I love that kind of otherworldly, like medieval settings. I was always drawn to them. The incredible music by Jeremy Soule, one of my like top composers that influenced me, like in 2000s, in 2010s, like a huge influence on me. The concept of like, because the game is kind of built about around like exploring, and it always incentivized you to like explore more. It incentivized you to like go into every hook and cranny and see what there is, and there's always little surprises here and there hidden. I also have memories of playing it with my brothers, later with my brother watching me play it, and now we exchanged. I used to see my father play, now it's my brother sitting watching me play. But anyway, somehow that was like a sweet memory, and my cousins visiting me and also playing it as well. And it's a platformer, so it's always like, it's very like always pushes you forward to keep exploring, and all the environments like are, especially I'm referring to the PC. I never played the PS1. I didn't know that there exists actually like separate versions made of it. Like, and just every environment I explored felt like so, I don't know, beautiful to explore. And I don't know how, but like even remembering the first game, the first Harry Potter game, like it was 2001, I think. I until this point have like very like, I don't know, some insane nostalgia from some of the game locations that I see there, with that old graphics, with those like specifically in that aesthetics. Like, and I'm I love the fact that there was, I mean, it's now people want as open world as possible, but I love that there was places you couldn't access. So as a kid, I was like imagining what is there behind that gate, or that it's just textures and it just doesn't exist, and that world is not drawn, but somehow it provided me such a like scope for imagination, which is an expression I took from Anne with an E series, which I really love how she portrays the world. But anyways, basically, yeah, like that was really really beautiful. So that was a big part of my childhood. And then another one on the other hand side, was Warcraft, like actually, but Warcraft 3 specifically. So that one was also like a big game that I don't know, I just got so immersed in that world and the different alliances, and it was strategic, so it was another genre of video games, but um, it was also in the fantasy setting, but it was I loved the story, and that's another game I can talk about a lot. But I guess these are the two kind of that come to my mind that shaped that Kyle of like 2002, 3, and 4. Like, I don't know.
So, thank you for sharing that. And I have memories as well of playing those Harry Potter games on PC, and I can relate to, the the sense of wonder that they created. So I'm happy to hear that like you enjoyed those games because like it's nice. Sorry, I'm trying to phrase that in a way that's not weird. I like when people have played games and like they speak so fondly of games that I personally also have fond memories of because I can relate better to that. Not that I can't relate to like people having fond memories of games, but like I can come from a place of experience with those games as well. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, um,
Mm.
now Kyle, I am curious as well because one of the things that you had wanted to talk to or speak to was like the kind of game that you would like to work on if you were given the freedom to kind of like pick your project or uh, if you were in charge of making the game or however you want to like create the parameters to that. I'm wondering, with that, like what kind of game or what game, I guess, it can be a specific series or your own envisioning of a series or what have you, but like what game would you like to work on if you were given the creative freedom or like, just had the ability to be like, I'm gonna come work with you and you got to make that decision, walk in the door and go.
Yes, yes. Um, so I would say that probably just how I divide my production, like in general, there are many genres, and there's orchestral, and there's I don't know, rock music, and there's jazz music. There's many genres of music, but kind of a very general box. Maybe it's not correct to put into it. Is like there's the kind of the happy, the light box, and then there's like the dark and like the dark and cinematic box. So I really love both of those boxes. Let's put it that way. And so my passion would be like divided in between those two. So I would really like I really love working like in fact a lot of my soundtracks that I've worked on are actually quite dark, and a lot of the games that I worked on actually had like a more darker connotations in them, like speaking like earlier of the case of the Golden Idol or like Legacy of Kain. But I would say the closest I could say is a game that, if we're talking in the dark direction, it's a game that kind of like resembles the atmosphere of the very first Assassin's Creed game, which I also really, really love. Like that first one, because the second they're all great in the series, but I feel like the first one just created something like amazing. I don't know. It was so deep. It was so philosophical. The atmosphere is so dark. The soundtrack that Jesper Kidd composed for it is just something. I don't know, it's otherworldly in a way, but it's so enigmatic and it's so mysterious, and I'm just like really, really, really digging that whole atmosphere. So working on a project that is like wants to try to kind of recapture that atmosphere of the first game, like that will be really, really wonderful. In fact, speaking of Assassin's Creed, I did remake the title theme of the first Assassin's Creed, so I think that remake that I made really shows very well of like what I wish to bring to this. How can I emphasize even more on this like cool, dark, philosophical, mysterious world that makes you think? And then another one I would say in this dark box would be definitely like a game like Deus Ex. I really love futuristic settings as well. I love um, old medieval things, but something about futuristic settings also really fascinates me. And I actually just finished playing the very first Deus Ex, the one from 2000. I'm actually going like chronologically, and I'm now playing the Invisible War, and then I'm gonna do the Human Revolution, and then Mankind Divided, like at the end. And I really love that, like I want to say like cyberpunkish, like futuristic atmosphere, but also again a game with some deep philosophical meanings and questions of like the authorities and are they really who they are, and some conspiracies and that detective vibe. I really love detective aspects in games, and the AI, you know, is so fascinating, and the integration with AI and so like yeah, something that explores those topics. So that's speaking of like kind of the dark box that I'm really that I'm passionate about, those directions. And then speaking in the happy box, I would definitely say that I would really enjoy to work on a game like here one of my influences is definitely like Last Guardian. Maybe you heard it. It's a PS4 game, but it's a game about it's a very beautiful game. It's a relation. It's I'm not gonna talk about it too long, but it's a really touching, beautiful, inspirational story. And when I watched it, it like made me like tear up when I was seeing like a playthrough. I couldn't play it because it's on PS and I couldn't play it on PC, but I was so hooked that I saw it entirely. And that kind of game that is also like cinematic, but the tone of it is like, oh my god, some of the music there, like that, the composer is Takeshi Furukawa, who worked on it, and it's it's incredible. It's very inspirational, and it's very like makes you feel very like uplifted, and it's a beautiful also story, and like that kind of story will be beautiful to be that part of that kind of story. And then of course, most certainly something like in that Harry Potter, like I would say probably Elder Scrolls with their fantasy setting, like that Heroes of Might and Magic in that medieval setting, like that Warcraft. Like I feel like you could almost put them in one, not all in one under one umbrella, but they're not too far from each other. So working on something that it will uh, also be wondrous and magical, and maybe like leave like some happy and amazing trace in the player's experience. I think that would be great. So but in overall, I would say it's working on something uh, that fundamentally like makes you feel something more, something deeper, like those amazing feelings that I got to feel playing them, and I want to work on projects that also can evoke that too. So something like that.
So, thank you for sharing that. Excuse me for 1 second.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. No, but thank you for sharing that. And, I apologize for my throat deciding that was the moment it needed to cough. But, you know,
It's
I
okay.
I understand what you're saying. Like, I did take a look at your I don't know if demo reels is the appropriate term. However, like from what I did listen to, and I'm no expert, so like don't mind me not saying too much in terms of words or like things for this. But like what I listened to of the what you've done, I found it was nice. I thought it was, that it given like hearing you talk about what you would like to work towards or like, the things that you would like to contribute to or however you'd like to phrase that, like the what have yous of it. I I understand completely because it's, the passion that you have and like the things that you would hope to do. I I could see that fitting like what the stuff I listened to of you, I could see that fitting in like, those kind of games or in that kind of like theming or pathing. Again, I'm not a good music person, so forgive me for not being able to give any more than just, very basic level praise of I understand what you're saying and I think, that what you do would fit.
Oh, thank you, Link. I really appreciate that. That's great. And please, no worries at all. Like that's the wonderful thing about music is that it can be described in so many ways, and that's what makes it. But but it's also so universal because it can speak to people from different cultures, different places. So I'm feeling complimented that you also feel that you feel that way. That's it's great. So thank you for for checking it out. Also, I mean, I also keep looking at my kind of like playlist that I have here. Not playlist, I'm sorry. Like the list I have of games that influence me, and they're all from different genres, really, and they are all. And but I guess if I could unite them all, I definitely want to be part of some exciting, exciting and memorable experience for the players, and I don't know, and to. So, anyways, and I think you understood that anyway. So, yeah, thank you for your comment.
And, as well, like, my fingers crossed for you to be, like, successful in that direction, because, like, far be it for me to ever unintentionally imply that I wouldn't have my fingers crossed, for people. How, like, I would like to hope it's implicitly applied, at least, that, that's what I would hope for. But, like, fingers crossed for you that you can work towards that direction and maybe one day get to work on or adjacent to or what have you, one of those projects. Because, like, you know, I'm I'm sure that anyone that works in the passion industry, just the idea of getting to go to the big leagues, whatever their version of the big leagues is, right, is just like a fantastic thing. And I hope that, that for everyone more or less in the industry, that they one day get to go swinging on like those kind of things, right? So like fingers crossed for you, because like I want to hear you succeed. I want to know that you succeed, just like I want to know that everyone else does. But like, you know, I hope that you get to one day achieve those dreams.
Oh, thank you so much, Link. I really do hope also that 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 all of that happens. Sincerely, I mean, it's been quite a journey getting to know the industry, being like honestly completely oblivious to what is it really all about. Because I only wanted to work on games because I wanted to make music for games because I just love video games, but I didn't really know anyone from like the industry. And I'm sure a lot of people do have like that similar background where they just kind of got into it. But also like when I was growing up, now our gaming industry in Eastern Europe is growing and there's more games happening. But at the time when I was heavily getting into it, there wasn't so much really happening. So essentially like, and a lot of the projects that I really enjoy, and even like looking at the games that influenced me and that I grew up on, I realized they're actually most of them are from like Western market. They're either made in UK or they're made maybe somewhere like in Western Europe, or they're majority of them made in US actually. So that's kind of the market where that at this point, like for me, that provides the ability, like the chance to actually like work on something like this at this time. I mean, of course, things are changing. The indie game dev scene is changing. It's accessible to anyone. You can, work on amazing projects like from and find amazing projects from all over the world. But um, a lot of it for me is to like predominantly try to succeed in the Western market and hopefully get to be known in the industry basically here, like in UK and in US and in Canada. And Case of the Golden Idol did bring me a small fraction of recognition. Definitely, there are some people recognizing it and are more inclined to giving me a shot. But because also it's also the industry is so like also oversaturated, like of course with creatives like for every position that you kind of want to go to. It's kind of like in between, like there's your dream here and then there's you here, and then kind of in between that there is like this huge wall of like I don't know, like many studios for example already been working with one person for many years. So then how do you kind of almost convince them to give somebody new a shot, so being a newcomer kind of also in the industry, I hope to be able to make it. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Definitely I believe I have the tenacity definitely to make it happen, and I hope that yeah, I hope it works out in that hindsight.
Again, I'll fingers crossed for you, because like, I hope everyone gets to succeed in the industry, because there's so much varied talent, so many different perspectives, so much cool stuff that gets brought to the table. So like, yeah, I 100%, I hope you get to succeed, because, you know, I I like knowing that there's going to be so many other people and there's going to be so many unique perspectives influencing everything. So yeah, fingers crossed for you. I hope that works out. Now,
Mm.
not to like aggressively change the topic. I am horrible at transitions, I would like to fully admit. So, not to be a horrible transitionist on this one. However, I would also feel remiss if I didn't, in all of this, as we're all talking about like all these video games and like, talking about you and the upbringing and like your influences and, what you hope to achieve and whatnot. I would feel remiss if I didn't ask about your life outside of games, and like I'm wondering what is it that you do to relax or uh, that you do to relax or you just do with your downtime? And if the answer is just more games, completely understandable because, why wouldn't it be a possibility? However, like I said, I'd feel bad if I didn't ask. So, like outside of games, is there anything else you do to relax or anything else you enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say I'm very much I don't know, maybe like since I was a kid, maybe it was again kind of like referencing back like my mom and grandma who were like very influential, like very influential people in my life. Um, they like both sadly like passed away now, but uh, what what they have taught me and what they wanted to put into me, like I very much got that. And in general, one thing that grew like I grew up having since I was a kid and since I was like kind of taught that almost you could say is just in general, I just really love life in overall. Like I love everything that it has to offer. So I'm like very curious about many different things that life can offer. Basically, in this short span, we live. I don't know, 80 years, 90 years, if everything goes good, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. But that time really does very much fly by, and I don't know what is in the afterlife. There's many theories what it could be, and but all I know for sure is that I have only like this life, and I'm I really love it because I understand that it's very rare to happen, like for us to be here, like to even be born. It's so many things have to happen. um like the universe has to exist, the sun has to keep shining, the earth has to keep spinning. Like if you dig into it, it's like incredible, amazing opportunity to even like be here and live this small 70, 80, 90 years. Some people live less and stuff. And I just want to like try to, in this time that I have, I do love to absorb as much as I can, kind of like from all its different aspects. So and so like outside of like also gaming, which I really love, I love gaming for the fact that it can, create these surreal experiences that which movies maybe can also do, but it's not the same. And animation can also, it's called also unbounded, but you can't play, in animation, or you can't play as a character in the film. So in the games, you can actually play in this world. So it's really amazing. I find it as a wonderful source of inspiration. But I also find traveling like a very big source of inspiration. And I really enjoy to go and discover new places and learn about them. Like even in these next 2 months alone, I have like this trip coming up. Like now that we're in UK, we're exploring a bit of that. So I have a trip coming up to Oxford to see Horsham, where a friend of mine lives there. And we're for my birthday in March, we're planning to go to York. So it really inspires me to go to these other places where and witness these other cities and see creations of architects. So my wife, she's an architect, so I got really um, kind of opened up my eyes on architecture in general, and just started to appreciate so much more. So I really love to do that. I love photography also a lot. To the point that we actually even started like a separate Instagram channel while we lived in Ukraine, called like Ukraine Landscapes, which was about like showing the different landscapes of like Ukraine. So that was really great. Actually, my wife, she's from Chile, from South America, and so we actually visited there last year, and also seeing like South America for the first time, and and experiencing that. Really enjoy it. So I would definitely say like traveling is big part of it. I really love reading actually also. That must be like in general, like in Ukraine, in I would say even almost like that's like almost like a Soviet Union thing. I don't know. I had that from my grandmother since I was like a kid. I always was with the books. I really enjoy also reading. Now I'm more reading about like audio and about theory, like more educational. But I also really love to read about like history and just even made up stories as well. So that's also something definitely that inspires me as well. Um, I love also doing just I guess like various forms of outdoors activities like hiking and maybe going on bike and doing that. I love to party actually. I as a side project of mine. So while Kyle Misko focuses on like music for video games, I have a side project which is like purely dedicated to DJing. So I also really love like that scene of DJing and making some parties. Actually played a game music party like a couple of weeks ago here in London, so that was great. Um, and then I would say that yeah, probably that would be the things, and then just learning in general, like whatever it would be about. If it would be about space or about history, I can't possibly learn it all, but I try to keep myself open minded to learn more things and about different cultures and about different people also like so. So I don't know. So I find life in itself for me is inspiration, and I try to discover what else it can offer and learn as much as I can from it. Yeah. So like
So, thank you for giving a lens into your life outside of gaming, outside of traditional work, so to say. Now, I do have a few quick follow-ups. I promise they are quick follow-ups for this one. And I'm
that.
wondering, because you said you have like all these plans to travel over the UK. And the UK, again, being from Canada, being from a place where our oldest city is like 300 years old kind of thing. Whereas you look at the UK where there are places that are like, yeah, we've existed for the last 2000 years or what have you. So like understandable, traveling the UK and exploring that and just seeing just the everything of it. But I'm wondering, if you have like, a short list, like your top three bucket list places that you want to travel to and see. As someone that likes traveling, I'm wondering what those places might be.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So that would be the places that I haven't visited yet. So Europe, I feel like I've had a chance to explore, and I still want to see things in Europe. But now, of course, it's about like this year is about like also discovering UK because we're most predominantly trying to answer the question of like, are we gonna live here and make this our home, or what's gonna happen? In Europe, of course, seeing Rome and Budapest and Czech Republic and even Montenegro with the Balkan countries, like really beautiful. But I would say that now, and then one thing that I didn't discover yet was South America. So, and the three places kind of like that I really want to explore next, like the top three, would be definitely like more of South America because that is also a fascinating continent with like lots of like ancient history of like the Incas and the Native Americans of that um of that area. So really amazing, and more of Chile and seeing like uh, the mountains. I love mountains. I have an obsession with mountains and with lighthouses. I don't know why, but I really love also lighthouses and mountains. Then Asia, like we actually just went to see the Lunar New Year just this past weekend, and that was just amazing. In fact, last year we saw it in Canada, in Toronto. We saw it in Chinatown, and it was really really sweet to see it. But this one here was very impressive. It was also like a whole parade, and the Asian culture in overall has so much wisdom and so much history, and they're also very ancient. And I don't know, that knowledge of ancient civilizations definitely attracts me a lot, and I want to kind of go more into that and meditation and all of this. And I did meet a lot of people also from Asia, and it's wonderful to talk with them. And then the last continent, which I also want to explore more. So I can't pinpoint exactly the countries because in Asia it could be like China, but also Japan. But but also like Korea and maybe like Malaysia, and like it's a lot of places. Same in South America. And then of course Africa. I would love to see, particularly like I'm very curious to explore Northern Africa. So I would. We're actually talking about maybe possibly finally going to Egypt, but not to like Cairo to see the pyramids. The pyramids is great, but I'm actually more interested to see like the ancient temples that they have like down the river, and so those would be the three general areas like that I haven't yet explored. So South America, Asia, and like northern part of Africa. It will be interesting to see.
Awesome. So, thank you for that. And I'm also wondering, if you have like, if there's any books that you feel people should like check out, like, what, like, and it doesn't have, I'm not meaning like specifically to a genre or what have you, just in general, if you had like a favorite book that if you were going to tell someone to pick up, what it might be.
Well, definitely if you ask me in like in my teens, it would definitely be Harry Potter. I really really loved, and I read all of them, and I just got so much completely hooked into it, and it was great. But I don't know if how I will feel reading it now, but like being 28, 29, knowing already what happens and stuff. So I wouldn't say. Um, which one would I would recommend? Yeah, it depends on what the person really wants to learn about. But I out because in the fantasy world, I really like enjoyed reading like the Game of Thrones. I read the very first one, and that one was really um got me really hooked. Mm, so it's hard to pinpoint one particular one. I loved reading the Sherlock Holmes books, as well, like detective stories. Um, but I don't know if I could pinpoint one. Mm, maybe give me a minute to think of this one. Um, I would say I actually enjoyed reading a lot. While I was in Ukraine, I went to like this library auction, and I found these um, unknown authors of like unknown Ukrainian authors, because we do have like very mainstream authors that kind of most people know about. But I was reading this one book about Lviv, which is this city on the very west, and that was a really really immersive story that made me feel like being right there in like the 1600s, and it kind of like describes like historical events that happened, but also is like told in a very interesting way. But I don't know if it exists with English translation, for that hand side. And I was also gifted a book recently that I want to read, but I don't know if I can recommend it yet. And now I've been, mostly into like audio mixing, and I'm reading this one book about recording history. That's my very current one. It's by Greg Milner, and that has been very fascinating because it's actually I think that will be a good recommendation. I think through talking about it, I kind of came to it. So I really enjoy the book that I'm reading currently. It's by Greg Milner, called Recording History of Music. No, it's called Perfecting the Sound Forever. And I even think it's interesting to read, not because you're a musician, but just I think for general education. I think it's a really fascinating story that Greg has captured, because he's basically talking about the creation of recording devices like that could record sound, and he's basically covering the whole area from 1880s, when Thomas Edison invented the phonograph, and up until like today, that we have like the studios and everything is digital. So he covers that like 100 years of recording history, and it's been such an interesting book to read. I really love it, and he goes into a lot of stories of how it was how these recording devices were being perfected over the years, and how it came to vinyl, and I think for general education about sound. And I think it's a really really nice read, and also will make you like because now we just play music on the speaker and it just plays, and then we play music from the phone and it just plays. But to understand how we came to be able to do that, especially in a world where sound is not meant to be reproduced, right? Because sound waves, we talk, we send sound waves, eventually they get like absorbed uh by air, right? So um in this world, the sound is, we're kind of tricking the system by being able to record sound and being able to reproduce it, because you're just meant to say something, it's said, and then that's it. And then you play something, it's played, and then you can't repeat it. So seeing how humanity found a way to kind of like bypass it and find a way to storage sound um, and reproduce it. I think it's really it's an interesting read, and it has so many references to so many artists. It has so many stories that are not out there just like this on the internet to find. I think it's a good one. So yeah.
So thank you for that recommendation. I hopefully, if like that sounds interesting, like the history of um just the history of like how we got from, like you said, Thomas Edison's era of doing recordings, to now is always like, 'cause that kind of stuff is always interesting. Like for me, I know a little bit more about, like photography, going from like the camera obscura and like the silver plates and the just all of that era of like actual poison that can do some real harm to like, to actual film and blah 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 blah. Um, and I've never actually looked into the history of like audio side of things. So that's like a really interesting thing to bring up. I made a note of that. I'm not going to make any promises, but that sounds interesting enough that if like I'm ever in a position, I'll remember that we spoke about that and like have something that I can actually say, oh, I can look into this. So thank you for that recommendation for myself and for anyone else that would be interested in like the history of, like how we kind of perfected recording stuff.
Yes. And how it continues to be perfected. Like it keeps going. The story keeps going. This book is from 2009, so it does kind of like still kind of like talks about like CDs and that era, like, so it might maybe feel like not like exactly super relevant to 2025 precisely, but it's still like extremely relevant, and a lot of things that happened in those times. So it's basically like from 1880s until like 2010, 2009, and you can see that gap. And I think, yeah, you will find it very like interesting in general, and I think you will gain new appreciation for all these recording devices we have, and understanding how the humanity has worked its way to be able to reproduce sound. So it's cool, and it doesn't get too scientific, it and maybe it doesn't get so super technical that only people can understand, like that are like in it in a technical sense. um so I think it's like also accessible just for general interest, and so that's cool. So I'm glad you found that recommendation useful.
Now, yes, yes, thank you again for recommending it. And yes, I understand what you're saying, and like, yeah, I agree because it's a little old, but at the same time, that it gives at least a picture into it. And if you really want to know what's happened in the last 15 years, well, you at least have a foundation of the last 200 years to start off of, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. So that's great.
So So, Kyle, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I've kept you here for about an hour. I do want to bug you though with one more quick one, or I shouldn't say one more. I want to bug you with a few more quick ones, and by that I mean the lightning round. And now these are uh, lighthearted. They're nonsensical. They're gonna be random, as well. I'm going to say they're nonsensical. So by all means, don't stress about trying to overthink them because if you overthink them, they fall apart. And I've fallen to that myself. Other people have, you know, now it is sometimes fun to explore the nonsense that they are. However, it doesn't do you good mentally, or at least it doesn't do me good mentally. So I'm just giving you that heads up before I dive into this, if you're okay with it. And once we do that, we'll wrap it up, and I'll let you get on with your evening because there is a bit of a time difference, and I want to at least let you have some actual downtime tonight.
Thank you. That sounds like a great plan. Sure. Let's go
Awesome.
for it.
Awesome. Let's see what the bot throws at us first.
Okay.
What personality traits do you feel a pet cat would need to have the name Captain Falcon?
So one more time. Which?
What personality traits do you feel a pet cat would need to have the name Captain Falcon?
Well, I don't know who is Captain Falcon so much, but if it's a captain, I guess it has to be a leader, and I don't know, um, something a leader and confident. But again, I don't know who is Falcon, so that's why I'm only deriving from the word captain. So I would
You
probably
know,
go with those captain
that
qualities.
That's no, that's perfectly fair. Um, I will admit I am in the process of reworking these questions to be a little more freeform, a little easier. So thank you for that one. Let's see if the next ones are a little nicer, a little more transferable or what have you. Um, Here, hopefully this one works out. Which character in media is most likely to assume that claustrophobia is a fear of crabs?
That claustrophobia is a fear of crabs.
Yes, which like video game character do you feel is most likely to assume claustrophobia is a fear of crabs?
Oh my god. Um, the fear of crabs. Um, I don't know. I would. The only one that comes to my mind is just like Ron Weasley, honestly, who is afraid of spiders, and maybe he'll he'll be afraid of crabs also for some reason because he doesn't like the tentacles and stuff. And I don't know. So that could be probably it.
In the defense of that, I what if what are crabs if not underwater spiders, right? Just with some extra appendages.
Yes, it's true. It's true. So so yeah.
So let me hit you with one more. Which video game character do you think is most likely to not return the shopping cart to the corral after shopping?
Um, which video game character would not return the shopping cart after shopping, basically,
Yes, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, I think my well, probably somebody from Tony Hawk series, honestly. Like they would they would just take that shopping cart and use it as part of like some skate theme and totally not return it. So I think somebody from there.
That is perfectly valid. The moment you said Tony Hawk, I assumed the direction you were going is they would just steal it and use it themselves. You know,
Yeah.
like why wouldn't you? Like if you're already skating around on a skateboard, why not just steal the shopping cart and go to town too, right?
Yes, exactly, and do something like what Jackass did, in their TV show, something ridiculous with that.
Yes, exactly. Now, as I did say, that was the final stuff, the last things I wanted to truly bug you with. So, like, as I said, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. However, I do want to say, like, if there was anything else you did want to discuss, a cool game, something else you're doing, or just something you feel more people should be aware of, by all means, the floor is yours as well. Please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also include in the episode description.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always something more to say or to add, but well, first of all, I wanted to say that I'm very grateful to anyone who listened up until also this point and was following this story and following my answers, even though they could be sometimes going in many different directions, but hopefully eventually actually answering the actual question. So I'm very grateful for that. um, I would say that I would definitely well, I'm excited about this year and about 2025 in general. I'm curious to see how it goes. Um, I'm on this path. I'm on this journey of kind of building a brand, like from from scratch, like on my own. I don't really have like any like external help. It's all I mean, of course, now I do know people in the industry, and I do get advices and everything. But essentially, it's just me kind of trying to figure it out and see if I can make this dream come true. So whoever kind of is interested to stay on this ride and see if I make it. Like so far, I have been actually like I've been feeling very blessed because I've been working actually full time as composer and sound designer here in London. So it is like a dream. But let's see how it if it keeps going, of course, and how it goes from here. Um, so yeah, so whoever is interested to yeah, so whoever is interested to kind of be also part of this journey, they're very much welcome to uh, check out some of my stuff or check out my work on Spotify or on Apple Music or YouTube is probably where I'm like mostly active, where I like post ups also updates and also I also invite sometimes some guests, and we try to do some interesting also things there and interesting discussions. Um, and then yeah, and then like at whichever point you are right now in life, I would say that definitely I wish you all the good energies. I wish you all the best in that hindsight. I hope that whatever it is you're trying to accomplish and trying to succeed in, no matter really what like the society or the people say, like I'm with you. Like this one is for the for people who so whoever is going through anything like and I just want to send some also good energies out there and just say that it's possible and you can like many things are actually very much accomplishable through hard work, through a lot of tenacity, through challenges, of course. Um, and I think one thing I've learned in life is that it's also so important to look at like as well failures as well, because in fact we actually learn more from failures than we do learn from successes. I mean, because from successes I mean, it's amazing to succeed, but kind of you did everything right, you succeeded, great. So just keep doing that. But from failures, you could actually gain more because you didn't succeed. So then, okay, you could actually like learn something from it. So I want to like encourage people to not get discouraged by the failures and actually look at them as opportunities to um as opportunities uh to to grow, to learn on that mistake, and then go again, because every day is a new day, and I think it's every day could be that new beginning for the person. It could be a new chapter in their life. um yes, and just stay tuned, stay keep uh, open-minded to new people, to new thoughts, to new opinions, to new music, to new games, and keep trying something new, um and kind of uh keep exploring the millions and infinite things that I think this life here on Earth particularly like has to offer, which it has to offer a lot of things as well. And of course, I wish everyone to be always surrounded um by people that that they love and love them back, and kind of just um and succeed in all the possible ways. So I would say that's my main wishes.
So, thank you for those parting words, for that positivity. Sorry, you were as you were talking, I was in my head, I'm like, "There's a perfect word for this," and I'm really sucking at trying to figure out that perfect word, but thank you for that positivity to leave us. Like, that's a real high note to go out on, and, I think that's just fantastic. So thank you so much for that, and as well, as I said, or I shouldn't say it that way, that makes it sound like I'm gonna, like, you know, uh, negatively or what have you. But as well, there we go, there's the way to phrase it. As well, where can people find you? Like, on social medias, websites, what have you? Like, where can they learn more about
Oh, that's one thing that I try to take care of very in a very proper way. Basically, I try to So if you look me up as Kyle Misko, you're actually gonna be able to find everything there is. Like even literally just on Google, like typing in Kyle Misko, you'll see that it's like musical composer, like what I've worked on. Um, I stay up to date with like the Spotify's and Apple Music, so you can like hear like latest releases and everything that I've worked on that I can release, because of course there's projects that I'm currently working on that I'm not that I can't yet publish out there, but they will get there eventually. I will say there's actually a lot of very exciting soundtracks that I've been working on recently. So this year particularly will have a lot of really great tunes. So I would definitely stay tuned for that. And then yeah, I would say going and just googling Kyle Misko and then finding whichever medium that you use, because I made sure to kind of stay consistent on pretty much all of the platforms. So whether it's Instagram and TikTok, where I would like post more like personal day-to-day things, like just like exploring the city, or just like things that happened, like the Lunar New Year just happened, so I'll be sharing some pictures and photos from that. Whether it's maybe Twitter, which has like a shorter format, but still I do also share updates there. Um, I do like so on my website. I also do like blogs, just about like once a month. And anyways, I duplicate them to LinkedIn and to Facebook as well. So you'll find them on any of the platforms that you usually use generally. Um, but I do share like blogs, and I write some stories. Like my recent one was about playing Deus Ex. I just finished playing that, so I posted about that. Um, the other time, I don't know, a few months ago, I went to Chile, and so I posted. So I do have this kind of blog page happening on my website, and there's a way to kind of like sign up also for it, or just again following on any of the social medias, and you'll inevitably see them. And then lastly, YouTube. Really, like, in fact, I should have probably started with YouTube, because that's where my journey started. On YouTube as Kyle Misko also. And yeah, if you go to my oldest video, you'll see that it started in 2015, and that like very first project that got me into gaming was like the Legacy of Kain and remaking the soundtracks. Um, so so yeah, I would say that. And then if it's music that you're looking for, then it's on Apple Music and on Spotify. So I try to stay consistent also on those with releases. And there's so much to check out in different genres of music. So I'm sure that whichever taste you have of music, I'm sure that I have that soundtrack that you'll enjoy to hear. Yeah, and then drop by in any of those, and feel free to, I don't know, drop a comment at some point. Let me know what you think.
Awesome. So, Kyle, thank you so much for, for that. I'll be sure to include, you know, links there so that way anyone that's interested, they have an easy way to find that from the description. But at the same time, like you said, it sounds like just being able to Google Kyle Misko is going to get you to your website, which leads to every place as well. So, like, you know, there's plenty of options is what I'm getting at there, that people have a nice, easy way to find you and, ways to learn more about and follow you. So that's great to hear. But
Yeah.
outside of all of that, like I said, if there wasn't anything else, I will definitely wrap it up and I will let you get on with your day so that way you can, enjoy your evening. I won't steal any more of your time.
Yeah, no, please. It was such a pleasure, really. Thank you so much for this. I'm so glad that again we made it happen after several months of communication, and again the time zone differences. And I'm so glad that we figured it out and we were able to have this chat. And I really also love your questions. Also, they made me like, now I'm like leaving this on like a reminiscent note, thinking of like all the things that happened up until this point, and where I'm at and everything. Um, so definitely very very grateful to you for that as well. And um, yes, I thinking if there was something else I wanted to say or something else I wanted to add, but there is always something I can think of. But no, I would say that yeah, that's it. And then if the people want to, like, I don't know, if they're predominantly using, I don't know, Instagram or LinkedIn, whichever platform, they can follow on that one and then see what's happening. So yeah, all right.
Awesome. So again, thank you for that. And yes, I'm also glad that we were able to work it out. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for uh what's the right way to phrase it? Um for suffering through, I guess, the working of things out with me. Because like you said, there is a time zone difference, and it's always a bit of a headache just to try and work all that out and find times that work with everyone. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just as anyone that's had to go over time zones knows, it's never easy. So I'm glad that we were able to figure that out. And I'm glad that you enjoyed, your time speaking with me because it was nice. It was fun getting to hear your answers, to talk with you about, who you are, how you came about into everything. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Really is how I should have just cut that off with.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So thanks again to Kyle for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Roland Jenkins for the use of music from the title track from Road Steep. Be sure to check out the episode description for links to socials, websites, and other means that will allow you to learn more about or support Kyle and the podcast. While you're doing that, share, like, follow, whatever else you feel makes the algorithm work. Thanks. Till next time.